Thanks, of course, to the Library Association, the Legacy Fund, for, of course, for the state to provide this. And of course, Katie called and it's like, hey, I'll come and do something. This is not so out of my realm of species. I taught for 34 years. So I didn't teach guitar though. I taught world history, to give you a little background. I did professionally play on the road for many years. Actually, I've been playing for 40 years. But I kind of used to play out of Nashville a little bit and different other places like Crystal Gale and Juice Newton back in the early 80s. And then I decided to plug on that and then use my degree. So which is teaching. I didn't teach music, I taught world history. So I've got a little bit of background on that part of it. But it's great for all the state of Minnesota providing so much money to all these things to do this. I'm over in Winstead on Thursday. If you really like this one, you can go on Thursday. Playing there too and doing this. But oftentimes I'll sit all night and I'll play guitars and I'll play harmonica and all that kind of stuff. But I have a guitar or a banjo, those type of things with me. So now I get to talk a little bit about the history. Who plays guitar now? Got one? Yes. Who was wanted to play a guitar? Everybody's wanted to or tried and then they ended up giving it up after a couple of years, or you're still working. It is.
No, I would like to learn.
Okay, you're never too old. You can always do something. So let me give you a little history on the whole thing, because this is an instrument that's loved by a lot of people, collected, traded, played, hated. You were talking about how everything got loud. You love it, and then it got kind of loud, and you were acoustic. And then they plugged them in, and he said, "I'm out of here," right? And it got too loud. So it's loved, hated, everything else around the world. So I'll kind of give you a little history of the whole thing. I won't sit back in the early history that long because I could, but that could spend an hour just on Egypt and Greeks and the lutes and things that were going on in Europe. But I won't. I'll just show you how I brought various instruments here, all types. Not all of them that came out of the closet, but I gave a few of these tonight, so give you an idea what how this instrument kind of evolved. So it started off, of course, acoustic. Give you a little quick history. Egypt had something, was 4 strings. The Greeks had one. It's written up in the Bible. The Old Testament has something, but they're not all these 6-string instruments that you maybe classic. If I was going to talk about a 6-string that everybody thinks about, they always think of this one right here, which is an acoustic, flat top. But when they talk about guitar, this is the guitar. This is just one version of it. Americans know this version so well because they see it in country music and they see it in folk music and bluegrass and all that stuff. But this is a flat top, but this is not the way it started at all. So you go back and then the first ones were mainly 4 strings. Then the first 5-string came around, and that was going to be around Spain. In Spanish, they call it guitarra, and Latina or something like that. So the Latin instrument. But basically, they were kind of copying a thing called the lute, which is going to be from the Renaissance. And basically, all they're doing is running strings over the top of a bridge to make some sound, to make over a soundboard. And I'll kind of go over all that stuff as explain how each one of these kind of make a sound. But that's basically what was going on. They were just trying to make stringed instruments a little louder, or because they might have by accident plucked something and they got a sound on it and they want to redo it. And then somebody came up with some ideas, sitting around, and they could actually make louder noises with certain things. So the classic one that everybody kind of thinks about is going to be this flat top. And I'll talk a little more about flat top another time. So anyways, early on, this is probably one of the first designs. This has got an electric pickup here. So originally they didn't have an electric pickup in it, of course. But anybody know what does this look like? What does this look like? If you're looking at this right now, this guitar, what kind of an instrument does it? You think it's copying? It's a violin. So obviously the early guitar players in Spain, they're sitting back and they're going, how can we make a big violin and play something like that? Now violins have only 4 strings, and their mandolins have 8. Mandolins are tuned like a violin. They call oftentimes mandolin a 4-man's fiddle. And But they have the 8 strings on there so they can kind of get a little more sound and also a more chorus sound. But anyways, they designed these after a violin. Now on all these instruments right now, they all have, let me go through at least the technical specs of why they make sound. So, looks like a violin, and violins and also cellos and basses, string basses and all that have the same basically technical makeup. They have a soundboard, and they have a bridge, and they run these strings up and over the top of this little bridge right here, and this is called a soundboard. Most of the sound of the guitar comes out of this thing right here, this top section, right here. And the more vibration you can get into this top section, this top soundboard, the more sound you're going to get. So this one's designed like a violin. Banjo, just to give you a quick shot on the banjo, because you like to, we'll get more in the banjo a little bit later, but banjo gets its sound by running it over a skin. Early ones, these have these, some sort of skin, but you can see this has got a bridge running it over top of this little drum pin. And then you get these loud. But it's getting its sound because it's running on here, it's going through the instrument. Punches out here. This has got a little resonator thing that makes the sound punch out here. They're obnoxious for some people. But it's getting its sound because it's over the top of this skin right here. This one would get the same sound without even plugging it in. You get the sound from the sound spruce board on top of it. So, you can kind of hear it. If I plug it in, it can really get loud, then you'll leave. But you know, these early ones were really like jazzy. You know, it's for ragtime stuff. Even by not even plugging it in, you can still hear it get some sort of sound out of it. I really like arch tops. They're carved and they're pretty. Right. And even if so that's that without plugged in, but the sound's coming out of the soundboard again. This one's an electric version of something, I'll show you that. Now this, just without even plugging this one in, here's what a flat top sounds like. Let's get all the sound out of this right here. Flat tops don't have it arched over the top of it. The bridge is actually glued to the top of this soundboard.
That 1950?
This one is not. It's a newer version of it. I know that you're thinking this looks like a Gibson or something, but this is 2022. But I love the old paintings. I love sunbursts. But so that's what a flat top sounds like, and this is like Americans are used to that kind of stuff. Now originally, when they came from Spain, they used gut, they call it, gut strings from stomachs. And stretch them out, leather over the top, and really stretch them, dry them out really well, and that's what they're using for strings. So you got all this gut string running over the top of the bridge, and they obviously held up pretty well. And then later on, they used nylon strings. So when I was in Spain a few years ago, pre-COVID, because the world was pre-COVID back then. When I was in Spain, went into all these guitar shops, and you couldn't find a steel string guitar. This is steel string. These are all steel strings. You couldn't find a steel string guitar. It's all this classical stuff. I never bought one. I just, for some reason, the classical sound, or I never got into that as much. I've always been a steel string person. So the thing I don't have in my arsenal is a classical guitar. Maybe someday, but still, who knows. But they're nylon strings, and they have a different sound to it. So that's kind of the whole makeup of that. Give you another quick history of a different style right here. Let's do this before I even get into electrics. Okay, another soundboard. This one's an odd duck. So these are all basically all pre-electric. So this was a pre-electric too. So before electric guitars, everything is about getting the sound out there. This guitar was designed by two Czech brothers, the Dopre brothers. At the time in history, what was going on is you had a lot of brass bands, and you're talking about brass dance bands and stuff, I think. Your father was or something, might have been in it. Grandfather was in band or something like that. And when those brass bands, they get together and you have trumpets and horns and all this other stuff, but then these guitars, especially the wooden ones, they couldn't keep up with the sound. It's like, okay, you can't hear the guitar. Well, they had no electric guitars back then. So these engineers from, and this would be Czechoslovakia, they came around and they said, I wonder how we can do this, make a horn, or how can we make a guitar with a horn in it or something. So what they ended up doing is, first of all, this is brass. You can make it out of steel or whatever else. It's called a National Steel, but it's a resonator guitar. So they put like a coned horn inside here. So if I was going to put first of all, there's a bridge. You can see there's going to be a wooden bridge over here. The strings run over just like they run over on that guitar over here. And it runs into this aluminum, underneath this little grid here, there's an aluminum cone in here. And it runs over the top of this aluminum cone, and then the sound resonates through this trash can, I call it, and then pops out and it's loud. That's how it's done. And without even plugging this in, so it's got an interesting sound to it. It sounds like a trash can. A difference, but I like it. And I'll play something maybe later on. So that's how that kind of worked. And so what these two brothers did is they formed a company called Dobro, and then somebody bought them, named after their last name a little bit. And then somebody bought them out, and then they formed a company called National. This is a National. This is a 1933 National. So it's worth more than my truck out there, but I don't have to worry about it because you can't break this thing. You know, you can shoot at me and it will still be fine. This one, again, is a National. This one's got a lot of wear in it because I bought it at a vintage store. The guy baited me. I came into the guitar shop and I was going to buy another guitar. I had one. I said, hey, you got this thing here? And all of a sudden, he had it on the wall and it was kind of like beat up. And he knew that I wanted one and I wanted the original one when I found it. And he goes, so what do you think of that? I said, where'd you get that? So he came in the other day. I knew you would want this. And the next thing you know, I ended up buying it. I came out of there and said, I don't want that other guitar and I want this one. This one obviously is old because this guy, whoever played it, probably, from 1933, played cowboy chords because it's all worn up here. It's worn here, obviously, because he's got his arm like I have there. He's worn here. So I can get into that stuff too. But so the sound, pre-electric, this was like the thing to have. And then that went out of fashion once. Guy's name was like Les Paul, and you might have heard of Les Paul before. Les Paul. And then also even later on, some a guy named Leo Fender, maybe Paul Bixby, these terms. Have you heard of these people? It's a book I'm going to suggest to you too in a little bit. Those people were messing around trying to figure out how to get the sound up for these guitars. Because what's happened at that time in history, there were no guitars that were playing in the United States other than these acoustic guitars playing in country swing bands, and then you had the only guitars you had at the time were these steel guitars. And then what ended up, somebody came up with in 1927, I can't remember the guy's name, I probably have it down here somewhere. 1927, a guy came up with a thing called a pickup, and how to pick up sound. So let me just show you this one too. So a pickup designed by some electronic guy, and this guy was from Europe, I know that. And they were playing around, they had magnets. So a pickup guitar magnet, there's a whole bunch of them here too. They had magnets on there. They'd wrap around a bunch of copper around this thing. And then they'd hook, those of you that know a little bit of electronics, you know how to hook up a battery to a car, right? You got positive and you got your ground and you got so you got those two things, you put the black and you got the red. You mix them together, it's going to spark. Right, so but you don't, they would weld a positive and negative to a side of a magnet, wrap around all this copper. And then what you'd have is these steel strings going over the top of it, and it would make a sound. And it's like, well, that's cool, but it would pick up that vibration, and it would suck it into the cords that pick up in, and then all of a sudden you have sound if you had an amplifier. And a lot of early ones were being run into radios. Early radios. It's like, I'm getting more sound out of it. So it's like, cool. So then once that happened, people started goofing around and making things more and more and more and more. And I can get into that too, because it becomes a big battle. A battle on who's going to make the best guitar and all that stuff. So, first of all, like you're saying, some of the early first electric guitars, still 6-string, were played like this, just on their laps. These lap steel players. I have a steel player that plays with me in my band. And they just, like they're running up with, the bar up and down. And that's cool. But that's the only way they can get these twangy sounds out of things. And then eventually, a couple of guys, one of them's going to be Les Paul, who's a player, who's a really good player. And he was a professional player, and he was a jazz player, and all sorts of stuff. Les Paul started to come up with different ideas of how to have these electric guitars, or his guitars to be amplified. And so he was messing around with a bunch of pickups. Then his competition was a guy named, who was in California. Les Paul was from Illinois. And then a guy named Leo Fender out of California, who was a radio technician. He was an electronic geek is what he was. I guess he wore overalls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it'd be Leo Fender. And all he does is fix radios. But then also he started to go out to dance bands and watching people. And he saw these guitar players who were struggling about how to get sound out of these guitars. And there was a steel player, and these steel players wanted more and more sound out of things. And so he'd be over there messing around and seeing how everything was be done, and he'd bring it back to his little place, and he'd run it through a radio, and then he came up with an amplifier later on. And he was constantly putzing around. His wife really never saw him that much. He was up in the garage all the time. I guess he worked incessantly. That's all he did. And he'd go out to listen to these bands. Sometimes he'd go into the band stands, and then he'd be messing around with these guys' amps behind it. It's like, what's going on? And whatever he did, it worked. And so then a guy named Merle Travis. I'm going to plug this one in. Oh, there it is. A guy named Merle Travis wanted a guitar that he could play instead of playing like this, because everybody was playing like this. He wanted to play an electric guitar that was like these acoustic ones, and he wanted one so he could put it against his body. And so a guy named Paul Bixby. Guitar players, when they hear the name Bixby, they know right away that Bixby was a manufacturer. He was a craftsman. He carved things. Everything was finely carved, and he did molds and things. And when he made a guitar, he started making these guitars and making big guitar bodies. And then a guy instead of having him sit down there, a guy said, "Well, I want one to put against my body." Merle Travis did that, and so he made him a custom one. It's Paul Bixby. And then all of a sudden, he went to country band stuff, because everybody was playing country swing, Bob Wills and all those country players. And then all of a sudden, Leo Fender showed up one night. I said, "What's that guitar that guy's playing?" Merle Travis is playing. And he talked to Merle Travis during the break, and Paul Bixby, who is his 2 blocks down, was his competition in the radio stuff, said, "Hey, Paul was made it for me. What do you think?" I said, "It's great." He said, "Do you mind if I take that home tonight and just look at it?" And Leo took it home, brought it back to his little place, copied it, cut out some of the same copies that Bixby had, and basically Bixby's stuff was just finely crafted. It would cost basically as much as a car to make one. Bixby would do this. It was beautiful, some of the other stuff. And Leo said, "Well, I need to make something for the common man." Or common woman, but mainly men were playing at the time. And so he copied it, and he started messing around, and then he came up with early Telecasters and Stratocasters, Jazzmasters and stuff. Which I'll show you in a little bit. But anyways, Bixby got ripped off. Leo never ever admitted to stealing the idea. But when it came out, when all of the Telecasters and stuff come out, it's like, Paul said, that's mine. I did that. I did that. That's
I
mine.
didn't have a patent.
He didn't have a patent. What Bixby did have a patent for is this. You can see this says Bixby. So we had a tremolo. So let's say, you ever heard that before? Let's see if So if I was going to do, let's say an early, maybe you would remember this one. Let's see if I can remember it. This is the first album I used to listen to when Anybody heard that before?
Yes.
A guy named Dwayne Eddy and his twang guitar. And he would just, that's all he did, and he just have a saxophone behind him, and he was just, you know. And that was that's the only thing he was making his money off of after a while. So you hear these, like, Stray Cats, you know, Brian Setzer and stuff like that. I've heard those guys before, you know. Brian Setzer would jump around and spit all over everybody, and what is, you know. But that, and he played Gretches. So this is kind of a Gretsch style guitar. But so. You've got that, so Bixby came out with this basically pattern. It's been around ever since. It's a great, I think they're the greatest tremolos you're going to find. But the guitar part of it was really, Leo ended up taking it to another level. So Paul, in this book that I'll suggest to you someday, let's do this.
Mark?
Yeah. Yep.
Mark. Picks or?
The picks. That's a whole other thing, but I use thumb picks. There's different style of picks. Sometimes you're going to use, there's triangular picks. I threw those away basically 40 years ago. And I went with just thumbs. I changed, you know, I'll get into some finger picking thing here in a little bit. So, just while you're at it, here, I don't even know if I have any of those. So, those picks that you're talking about, they're great for flat picking and bluegrass and all that stuff. I do a different style of guitar picking using this thumb right here. Right? So I was talking about Merle Travis, the guy that Bixby made a guitar for. You know, he came up with a style of picking that I play right now, which is kind of, a lot of people don't do it. But it's where you're playing bass lines and you're playing flat pick and stuff at the same time. So let's say playing the bass there, you know. Bass. Merle Travis took a style of banjo picking, going back to that banjo, and he put it to a guitar. Chet Atkins did the same thing. Chet Atkins probably took it another level. You know, so you have Chet. So, you know, that kind of, you've heard that before? Like chicken pick and stuff? That's Chet Atkins.
I think people who didn't like guitar suddenly really started liking it.
with Chet Atkins and also Les
Yeah.
Paul.
Yeah,
Les Paul
that was
and Les Paul
earlier.
and Les Paul was more of a jazzy guy. So, and Les Paul didn't want to be known as a guitar maker and player. He wanted to be known as a player. He had radio shows and he wanted to go down famous for being a guitar player. In the process, he was trying to design a guitar, which was he designed another pickup. In the process, he designed a pickup that was going to be quiet, called a humbucker. They're quiet. It bucks the hum. Like, for example, let me show you here. I'll go back for Telecaster here in a second. Let's do this. Here's the one. Here's the rip-off. This is Leo Fender's Telecaster style. So, this is what Bixby actually did. This is the one that Merle Travis played that night, and Leo saw it on stage, and then Leo ended up going, I got to get one of those. So he copied it. And then he went back and he kept perfecting it, and then it came out, and it's like huge. And he made it so it was also, you'd have to pay a fortune for it. Whereas Paul Bixby designed this thing, and it was really beautiful, but it would cost, like I said, as much as a Chevrolet. And only professionals could kind of do that. So, but Leo ended up doing something where he didn't make it hand carved, he ended up bolting the necks on it. So he took the patterns, which is this little thing, cut it out, and then he sees 4 bolts, and he bolted this neck on it. He said, it can be made for everybody. I can mass produce this for everybody. But it gets a twangier sound. Let me see if I can see if this sound. It's got a lot of twang to it, so. Can you hear how twangy it is? And you get those country licks? But that's getting really nice and twangy. And that's what Merle Travis wanted, and he got it right there. So, and then of course Leo Fender took it home, and he did it. And now it's probably one of the most famous guitars ever, the Telecaster. Here, get a little history again. Here we're getting back into history. I know you don't want to talk about history, baby, but Leo Fender designed. So there's a thing called a Telecaster, which is this. This is a Telecaster. It's probably one of the most famous guitar styles. Then there's a thing called the Stratocaster, and there's a thing called the Jazzmaster. They're all Leo Fender's designs. And I don't want to throw you under the bus, but what was happening in history when these names were chosen? So the Telecaster, what was going on in history and the Telecaster was designed? Yeah.
Radio.
And one step beyond, you're right, radio was it? TV, telly. He says, what am I going to name this thing? You know, because he was into radios, really into radio. And then you were too young to know this, but there used to be black and white TVs. Yeah. With tubes where you turn them on, also 5 minutes later the thing might come on. Yeah, there is that. Yeah, everybody gather around. My first TV was black and white. But so then he said, what am I going to name this guitar that people? And he was producing them, and he wasn't making a lot of money. And his poor wife was like, they double mortgage their home. And he said, well, I got another idea, honey. It's like, no, would you just like take off the bibs and get out of it? Let's try some. He was promising her a boat and everything else, and someday we're going to retire, honey, and everything's going to be fine. I promise you. But he spent all the time in his, garage in Fullerton, California. So anyway, so the Telecaster was this, and then he came up with another one because this style of body, and I love Tellies. His style of body was a little rough. It kind of cuts into your system, it cuts into your chest and stuff a little bit. Then he came up with another design, which is not just 2 pickups, because this has a pickup here and a pickup right here. He came up with another design that has 3 pickups on it. They're all single coil, which means they're very noisy. If I had another amp here, it would buzz. Or if this was wired, if this library was wired bad, it is obviously wired well, because otherwise it would be going zzz the whole time, unless I'd go oh, there's the right, can you find the right thing that would stop buzzing? But usually there's a 60 amp type hum going on, which really makes it twang, which I love, you know. But it can also make things buzz. But anyways, so then the Stratocaster, he designed a thing called Stratocaster. What in history, here we go. We got one of the students back there again. What in history was actually going on when the Stratocaster was designed? He named it after something in history. When rock and roll was going,
Space race.
it's the space race, the stratosphere. So all of a sudden these come out. And then all of a sudden, if I said, you know, then the next one was going to be a thing called the Jazzmaster. Well, obviously jazz started to get electric then. And he wanted to keep, and he made another guitar that kept up with a thing called the Les Paul, which is probably just as famous as the Telly. And Les Paul, played by Les Paul, Gibson came up with the idea, we're going to name something after you, Les. It's going to be a Les Paul guitar, and it has these humbuckers like this, but it doesn't hum. It has a mellower tone to it. Because this mellower tone, he could do his style of playing, which he was more of a jazzy player, and they named the whole guitar after him. So, interesting stuff for somebody that's interested in it. So the Jazzmaster sounds jazzy. And then, of course, they have all sorts of versions of this. And people collect this stuff. I mean, I don't collect. My wife only allows a certain, no, that's nothing. I've got a couple of them at home. If I don't use it, I don't buy it. What I'll do is I'll trade. Like if I find something better, it's like the only reason, and then I'll buy it, and then I'll trade it off if I can make some money out of it. So, but I'm not gonna. I don't want to go to my grave. I don't have the money, but I don't want to go to my grave with all these guitars that are not used. So I got through that. Let's go. So Fender, Bixby. Let me see. What did I do? Oh, I talked about Bixby. Talked about Merle Travis a little bit in his story. The guy who designed the original pickup, his name is Adolf Rickenbacker. And there's a guitar called the Rickenbacker. Pricey. I don't like Rickenbackers, but they're just strange looking to me, and I just, but they have a certain sound. I think one of the guys, McGuinn, Roger McGuinn from the Birds, and something else too. He played a Rickenbacker, and when he strums, it's like, oh, that is definitely a different sound. So, yeah. So the electric took off, and now, of course, everybody's doing all sorts of stuff now with it. I'm just going to put a plug in for a book. I know that the library is going to be putting some books together, and I've got tons of books. Some of them are so scholarly that you just don't even really want to read. But if you're into read it, maybe you can download it or something online, who knows. But if you really want the battle between these guys, between not Rickenbacker, but they talk about Rickenbacker in here. But they'll talk about Leo Fender, Bixby, and Les Paul, and how they actually all got together. And they would sit back, and Leo was always thinking, so he's like distracted all the time, and how's that working? Usually Les Paul's hanging around, having a couple beers, drinking, thinking about how he's going to make some money being rich, playing guitar. And then, of course, Paul Bixby's always about design, and everything's got to be perfect, sand perfect, and all that. So they're all coming from a different area, but they changed the guitar world, especially if you're into electric. So if you really want, and here's a picture of a Les Paul right here. But a lot of cool, interesting stories about this thing. Just one quick story about Leo. Leo was strange. I think I would have gotten along with him, but I don't know how much of a personality he had. I'll tell you why he's out in the garage and his wife is. But Leo also started designing amplifiers to help along with his guitars. So he's designing I don't know if you've heard of there's deluxe reverbs, and there's all these different amplifiers to make these things sound really good. And because you can't really play the guitar unless you have an amplifier that's going to be playing these things through. Because if I unplug this, there's no sound on it. The only reason this thing gets, I'll just turn off the only reason you get sound out of it is it's because he's running these strings over these pickups that they designed, that they wrapped in wire, and it's taking up the vibration, sending it through, and sending it through a little amp right here. There's no sound in it. It's not like all this other stuff that I have there, or the flat tops. There's no sound. So it's, the only reason it has sound is because it's electric. So he's always trying to perfect that too. So everything that he was designing with this, he had to make go through these amplifiers. And if you get into that, that's a whole nother, you don't want to go down that hole either, because then you're going to start collecting. I've got friends that, they'll sit down, they may have the 300 amps. You want to hook up, look at this, and then you sit there. You plug that one in, and you plug that one up. I have maybe 5, which is enough. But you could go down, and then they trade for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I was just down at a place called Willie's Guitars, and that was about 2 days ago. It's in St. Paul, and he had a client coming in, and there's a guy going to buy a $55,000 telly. $55,000 for a 1955 telly. This is not who's going to spend that? Not, and it's because it's, I don't know what the history, but the guy who sells, this guy sells things to Keith Richards when he comes in town and all that stuff from Rolling Stones. And then they might have a concert at maybe one of the big places in town, and all of a sudden, just for the day, they just go guitar shopping, and then they have it. I had to leave in the morning because somebody big was coming in. I said, sorry, you gotta leave. You gotta leave. Why? Why? I said, well, I got a client coming in half an hour. You have a half an hour to mess around, and I gotta have you leave. So somebody big was being pulled in there, and I don't know who it was, a couple of days, and then probably bought one, and then they just schmooze them, and then it was interesting. So
do different amps create different sound?
right.
Okay, all right.
So yes, because this one's cool because this is the modern one. This one has, I can make it sound like an old Tweed, because I have a Tweed, but they're heavy. And I'm not kidding, also just carrying around all this stuff. This one's on, and also I have it on blonde right now. Blonde means it's got more of a middle-aged tone. The Tweed is really thick sounding, and there's a thing called a blackface, and those are great for doing really country stuff. So each amp is different. So Fender was designed most of these style amps. So the thing about it, he'd be sitting there and it's like, I gotta get the sound. And all these guys are like Merle Travis and all these country singers and country guys are always trying to find out what's the best sound. I need sound to cut across a bunch of different things. And then what he'd do is go out and watch it. One night, let's see if I get this. One night he was out watching a guy. Let's see if I even make this. This would be cool. I can't make it. Has anybody ever heard of a guy named Dick Dale? Dick Dale. Surf guitar? Okay. Let me see what I got here. Maybe I can. Okay. Maybe, have you heard this song? I'll kind of. This is when you left and you said, I'm out of here. You ever hear that? That's all he does.
Who is that?
Dick Dale. Have you heard this at all? Look, yeah. Download it tonight if you like surf guitar. This is California surf music, right? So, that's enough of that. So no, that's Dick Dale. But all Dick Dale would take is this telly like this, and he wanted the amps to distort, and he would just like crank it so it's a second. They wanted this thing just to totally distort, and then people were just bouncing around, and that was kind of the hip thing to do. He has his own sound, as soon as you hear that, that's Dick Dale, surf guitar. There's still surf guitar players in bands that just follow over along with that. So Dick Dale did that, and then what Leo did is, he goes, I want more sound. Because at that time they didn't have big sound systems. I need more sound out of the amp. So he needed more sound out of the amp in order to drive it across this big stage. Because they just didn't have the PAs, like this PA right here, check this 1, 2. That's awesome. But look how it's small, but it's big. I can get this thing to just blast. But they didn't have that technology. So it's like more speakers or whatever else, or bigger amps. So Dick Dale wanted always something bigger and something of a distort. Because that's what, he's just, and doing all that kind of stuff, and then his guitar would just be blasting. And then one night, so he went to a Dick Dale concert, and Dick Dale, come on up here, I can't get this thing to distort. So Leo had it all blasted. He didn't have it turned on yet. And he's sitting there trying to putz around. He had his ear on the front side of it trying to get it to work. And Dick Dale turned his guitar up all the way to 10. And Leo had it all the way to 10 on here. But Leo didn't know what was coming out yet, what was going to happen. Dick Dale just went, start strumming. Boom, blasted. Leo lost all the hearing in his left ear. Just like that. And for the rest of his life, this side was gone. Just from Dick Dale blasting it at one show where he just turned it on right before the show and boom, done. And everybody's got a little bit of hearing loss, but you can imagine you losing one just like that, having it, and your life depended on it, because you're always listening to music and trying to get the best sounds out of that. That almost destroyed him for a while. It's just, I can't hear anymore. Or I can only hear half. And then it takes years to adjust to that other ear. So, but another story in that book, if you really want to read it, which is good. So that's kind of a cool book. Let's see what else anything else on that side of it that I can come across. So I told you how a pickup works. The United States we're into different styles. Let me do this. So when you talk about different styles of playing, there's going to be, of course, I'll just use a flat top. This is your classic American thing that everything, they start, you always want to buy they always say, what do you want to start with on a guitar? I'd say always start with an acoustic. Because if you can play acoustic, you can play one. Because I would say in some ways it's a little harder to play acoustic for some people. Let me see if I can get this one to sound good. No, I put an electric pickup in this one. I plugged into it, so something, so but see, so, let's say if I'm going to do a classical style, so guitar styles. Again, this would be more maybe Spanish. Let's see if I can figure out some Spanish. I'm not a classical guitar player. Let's see. I'll try to get this sound like it. Kind of acoustic-y thing, or that would be more your classical style. Although if I had a nylon string, it'd sound a lot better. But this is kind of so you got your classical styles. Again, it's going to be more the finger picking stuff. The other one, gypsy jazz. I think I did something with her. So that's got the gypsy jazz stuff. That'd be like a Django Reinhardt stuff. Django Reinhardt is another famous gypsy jazz player, probably the most famous gypsy jazz player. He played with 3 fingers because a couple of them got cut off. So he had a different style of picking, which is cool. That's not in that book though. So I'm sure, but so then it is with that style, and I was talking about how finger style. You're talking about your flat pick. I don't have a flat pick here, but that's going to be more like, let's see if finger style, that's the style that I'm used to, kind of a mixture of both. Finger style, it's just a different, it's using all these fingers and using my thumb as a base the whole time. So if let's say, should I play, just sing you a song quick? Okay. You want to hear one off the album? The next album? I'll just do it quick. With a finger style. There we go, let's try this. Yeah, I'll do a song. Really quick. I'll do a song for my wife. How's that? Since she has allowed me to have all these guitars. Not that I need to ask her. She doesn't know about all of them. Yeah. Maybe I should. This is more finger style. On the road, all alone, somewhere south of Houston, this country band on the radio, something you get used to. Sunlight shining, headlights dying, lines run on forever. This picture of you, your sweet, sweet smile, pull me on for another mile. I work the nights in these neon lights, months and years, no glory. But it pays my bills, fights these ills, all led to that story. Big box stores, motel floors, lines run on forever. But this picture of you and your sweet, sweet eyes make me only realize all I want to do is give my love to you, hold you true and true, spend the day so true, sunlight to the moon, winter to June. All I want to do is give my love to you. Keeps falling while I write the songs about good times and hard times. The days go along. My dreamers and drinkers, big time sinkers, nights that went on too long, chasing money, calling dreams, yeah, living on all these live streams. These pictures of you, your sweet, sweet smile, pull me on for another mile. See, all I want to do is give my love to you, hold you through and through, spend the day so true, sunlight to the moon, winter to June. All I want to do is give my love to you. give my love to you. So that kind of gives you an idea of what finger picking's like? Kind of? Yeah, so I'm using my thumb on that. Or if I was gonna do a blues thing. Still doing pick. That's still finger picking. That style of finger picking. So there's the pick that a lot of people like to use, and then I casted that off a few years ago, and just because I started playing a lot of banjo, and then all of a sudden, it's like, I'm gonna do the both. I'm gonna go back to that old Travis style, that Earl Travis guy that, of course, Bixby designed a guitar for, all that stuff, and then it's like, then I just kind of went back. Although sometimes it wears your fingers other times. So anyways, when it comes to this banjo thing, it started off as an African instrument, and it only mainly had 1 or 2 strings running over, gourds. And the thing that really stayed the same with this style of African instrument is there's this rod that runs through the whole thing, it connects it. And they stuff a big rod through a cord, they have a neck, and then it would run right through this gourd, and they would string calf something over the top of it, put the strings over there, and then that would actually have a cool sound to it. And then usually maybe 1 or 2 strings, but then later on they were doing things where they didn't even have frets, they'd be running things with I've got a slide here. So that's it. So you get a really interesting sound out of it. So when I came over on the slave ships, of course, then they started to incorporate it. At first it was, the only thing they could do was make instruments out of whatever they had, which is going to be gourds and whatever got strings and stuff like that. And then later on, of course, they became more popular. But for a while, there was a protest because the instruments on the plantation, they wouldn't allow them to do anything but these old gourds and stuff like that. And so, you can play that thing, but that's not that. And then the banjo kind of evolved. The Irish got involved in it, and then all of a sudden you get that bluegrassy stuff, where you're gonna, it's gonna which wrecks the name of the banjo. This wrecked the banjo when that song came out, or when the movie came out. You've heard that. That's more your bluegrassy band stuff. But originally banjos were more like I was playing, more drony. It's called trans blues. It came from northern Africa. They played all this stuff. For the gas and TV, for the people in cars, they sit around fires, they play old guitars. So it's got that really drony, bluesy thing. That's originally the way the banjo was played, and then it was the Irish that got a hold of it, and then they made it into things that their Irish sounding stuff, and they tuned it, you dropped E's, and it sounded kind of cool. Different. But you go into a whole history on that stuff too. So I have a book here, which will be available soon. You want to read it?
You wrote it?
No, I wish. I wouldn't be sitting here, would I? So it's called Wells of Souls. The Well of Souls. So it goes through the whole history of the banjo. And it's one of those that it's easy to read. It keeps your attention. I hate books that don't keep my attention. It's like, oh boy, too scholarly. I don't have time to read this. I'll find something else. This one is fun to do because it's more of a story.
My grandma's banjo
Right.
is still intact with no string.
I'll buy it for you, $5.
No. Not for sale.
Okay.
Would there still be sound if I brought it to somebody that
Oh,
would
heck
string
yeah.
it?
Oh, definitely.
It's got the, you know, the leather,
Everything,
whatever.
there's a guy down in St. Peter.
St. Peter.
St. Peter down there that he'll redo all those if you want to. He's got a lot of, you walk in, it's right on Main Street, next to the sandwich shop right there. And you walk in there, he'll be in there and you walk in, all old banjos, and he can redo it for you if you want to. Or he can also tell you what it's worth. If not, I'll give you $10, Dean, I'll meet you after. I'll just take the chance.
Not for gravel.
No, but for something like that, that would be worth something maybe, you know, especially, you know, they can redo it. Banjos don't lose their,
It sat in the attic in northern Wisconsin
Okay.
until my dad died.
there you go, then you should hold on to that. Yeah, so, fun stuff. Yeah, so there's a book right there, and of course, I got the other one. Other things, slide playing, I played a little bit of slide, that's a whole different style. And I can play slide all night on different things. I usually play slide on something like that resonator that I just unplugged. So, should I play one more song for you and then?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you want to hear it on a banjo or you want to hear it on a resonator? Should I put it on a resonator?
Yes.
Okay, finish with the resonators. Let's see, he's got the front row. Let's do this. Because the resonator is a mixture of everything, right? It's kind of, let's do this here. The resonator is kind of everything. It's old, it's got kind of a banjo-ish type of thing. It's ugly, but yet beautiful in its own way, kind of like Barbra Streisand. Sorry. So, little resonator thing, it's got everything. It's got your electric. I don't play it that much, except when you come out. Okay. Leaves are falling all around. Must be on my way. Much obliged to you for the pleasant stay. Now it's time for me to go. These summer moons are light my way, but I can feel the pain, feel the rain. Headed my way. Sometimes I feel so tired. I've got to rebel on, sing my song, yeah. We're on my way. I must rebel on. No time to spread my roots. Must be around alone. Yeah. I drank of this 1,000 times. Yeah, must be around alone. But it's time for me to go. These summer moons are lighting my way. But I can't feel the pain, feel the rain. Headed my way. Sometimes I feel so tired. I've got to rebel on. Sing my song, yeah. We're on my way. Rebel on. There it is. Thank you.